Three Corners is just your average small town, standing on the banks of a flood-prone river with a large pub anchoring the village at a once-famous three-way intersection. Now it's simply convenient, as people chase the country dream, the country lifestyle, just not the unceasing agricultural workload. Population, 2,000-ish. But like all small towns, scratch the surface and you'll be surprised at what you find underneath. In that sense, Three Corners is really no different to any other small town I know, except perhaps for some of the characters you might meet. The Busker. He liked busking as people made their way to work. It seemed to hold more purpose. A melody or tune to make the morning less daunting. Most were wrapped up in their own world, their own music, marching to the beat of the business drum. He enjoyed the surprise that occasionally graced a face. They didn't expect him at that time. The big issue sellers were out in force, the beggars were still sleeping, and the city pulsed to a tune that was automatic and ran on hot, thick, steaming lattes. The joggers in their activewear and the suits with their sneakers. A fast pace he initially matched with his music, but it was too fast, too prolonged, too exhausting. So he started playing at his pace. His music, his style. There were the usual faces, for a large part mostly blank. Then the tourists who watched warily with curiosity. And occasionally there was the outsider, that girl. She blended into the background, not noticeable until you saw her. Then you would see that she dreamt while she walked, a smile tugging the corner of her mouth. She still looked around as she made her way amongst them. At first she was slow, but her pace now matches the rest of them. Sometimes it was the thought that he would make her smile that got him out of his small single bed in the old and faded room that was all he could manage. He'd stumble out, wash his face in the chipped and stained sink. The water ran yellow for 23 seconds every time before it cleared. He'd hoist his guitar case and the box of his CDs. He rarely made money at this time of day, but he was driven by something else, to make people live again, to see and hear what was around them instead of moving through the morning as part of something that had to be born rather than lived. He wanted them to live. Every person in every building had a soul that sung to something. And every time he stepped down the boarding house steps and over Athel, asleep in the doorway again, he hoped his music might get someone's soul to breathe again. He was in despair of ever making a difference until he spied the outsider. She was half a block away. A gap in the scores of pedestrians that linger at the lights then stream, only to stop again at the next lights. She heard the music earlier than most and looked around for it. He noticed, and his heart beat a little faster. As she was crossing the road, she spotted him playing and gave such a smile that reached all the way to her eyes and into his soul. A smile of pure delight that you saw often in small children but rarely in adults. He found himself smiling in return, and his hands flew remembering notes he thought were long forgotten. He mouthed a "Good morning." She returned the greeting and then was swallowed by the rest of the automatons making their way down the street. 6 times he saw her. 6 times that amazing smile that burst like the summer sun from behind grey skies and grey lives. And then she was gone. Day after day and week after week, he searched the morning crowds, the afternoon crowds. He played weekdays and weekends, but the smile was gone. So he sang about her and her smile instead. That song gave him hope. It gave others hope. A YouTube hit. He no longer stepped over Athel in the doorway, or lived in a single room that smelt of old mills, misery and barely forgotten cigarette smoke. He now looked out onto the river through floor-to-ceiling glass. And in every crowd, at every show, he still searched for that smile, that outsider. Today's episode of Three Corners was produced by our maestro,
Postie,
and featured the spelt-like tones of Jack. For more stories, go to hittheroadjack.com.au or subscribe to the Three Corners podcast.